Welcome to Off the Cuff with Kel, Conversations from the Frontline, a podcast and live show for survivors and the leaders who support them. I'm your host, Kelly Humphries, a survivor of child sexual abuse, advocate, author, speaker, ambassador, a lover of all things outdoors, with over 15 years of law enforcement experience. Please support me in my mission to break cycles of abuse and trauma. You can help by donating to my Patreon account at patreon.com/Kelly Humphries. Hey guys, how are you? Welcome to Off the Cuff with Kel, Conversations from the Frontline, a podcast and live show for survivors and those who support them. I'm your host, Kelly Humphries, a survivor of child sexual abuse, advocate, author, speaker, ambassador, lover of all things outdoors, and I have over 15 years of law enforcement experience. It's a diverse and inclusive show targeting areas of growth and leadership through trauma, help and healing, prevention and protection, stories of courage, survival, and a deep look at what it means to be a survivor. Some of the content tonight that you might hear is possibly triggering, so listener discretion is advised. We will be discussing themes of child sexual abuse, domestic violence, trauma, and other related themes. In this episode, I'm so excited. I am interviewing my most amazing hero, my mom, who's given me some pretty big wings to fly with. So she's here tonight to share her story very bravely and hang out with us for an hour. How you going, Mom?
Good, thanks. Thanks, Gal.
Look, so for those of you who are joining us tonight, thank you so much for being part of this episode. I was very nervous to have this conversation with my mom because we will be tackling some big things tonight. But I wanted to bring her on nice and early in the piece because I really want to set the foundations for this series, this podcast, and really highlight some of the things that I really believe need to be discussed. And that includes, you know, the silence across the generations. And that's very much true for Mum and I. You know, and I've rehearsed in my head 100,000 times the things that I wanted to talk about when I finally got Mum down into a podcast. And, you know, we're here, and I'm so very grateful, Mum, for you coming and spending this time with us. So I wanted to start I want to start with your story from the beginning. If whatever you're willing to share, Mum. I know if you've read my book, there's a chapter in there dedicated to my mum's story, but there's nothing like sharing it out loud. So I know, how old are you now? I'm going to get this wrong and completely embarrass myself.
57.
57 in a row. You know, there's lots of stigma, obviously, for your age group, you know, that things weren't spoken about. And I know you've come with me, you've been on TV with me, you've shared before very briefly, but I'd really like you, for those who are listening, to share your story for everyone who's out there. Can you hear me?
Well, yep. Sorry. Yep.
So just obviously.
I did realise that you were going to ask me some brutal questions, but yeah, okay, no worries.
Well, it's up to you what you want to share, Mum. So,
okay, well, you know, with regards to Kelly, I, you know, as she grew up, and that I really wanted to protect her from what had happened to me, as most parents, mothers particularly, do want to do, not realising that what had happened to me was the same thing really as her. I mean, when I was a child, I didn't have. Well, no one did actually really have people to talk to like we do now, but things are so much more open and easy to talk about. But I never told anyone what happened to me until Kelly told us what had happened to her. And my father, well, I had been groomed also, but I didn't know it was that. You just don't talk about those things with your friends. But my father basically raped me, and but he had been molesting my sister and I for a long while before that, but yeah, and that's what happened to me. But I said to myself, I won't let that happen to my daughter. And unfortunately, I underestimated the power of a pedophile and the manipulative and conniving ways that they can get around to do what they feel they have to do.
So, thank you, Mum. I know when we sat down that day and I said, Mum, we're going to talk about this. And it was like we're sitting on this couch, and it was, I felt like it was really difficult. It was really difficult the first time to hear your story. But I remember that moment particularly. And for those who are listening, I was sexually abused by my uncle, which is my mother's brother, from the age of 8 through to 15. And I didn't know, and I didn't tell anyone about it. I didn't talk about it. And what Mum's referring to is that moment in time when I finally had to speak up about it. I didn't have a choice. I felt like I had to protect my sister. She's 10 years younger than me and much, much better looking. So, I had to protect her. That was, I was having nightmares, repeated nightmares that my uncle was coming for her. And, I had to do something. And I said to Mum and Dad, I need to talk to you about this thing. Can we talk? And when I had that conversation with Mum, I said, and I was so upset, so emotional. And Mum had said to me, she said, I never, never wanted this to happen to you because it happened to me too. And I have never told anyone. And that was a revelation moment for me because I knew for that moment that I wasn't alone, that I didn't have to do this on my own anymore. And that was really difficult because I had struggled for so long with this secret and so confused in my mind, and I felt so alone. And I feel like myself, and I mean, we've never really, and just for anyone who's really listening tonight, Mum and I haven't had this conversation. We've had it in brief ways where I'm like, all right, Mum, we're going to write about this. But we've never had a conversation. So you're hearing this conversation for the first time. And that in itself speaks to the stigma of silence because we just don't want to make it uncomfortable for each other.
And the power that the pedophile holds over the victim, because they make it so hard for them to be open, because our family is very open and we talk about everything and we're loving and hugging and everything. So it was hard for me to understand why Kelly couldn't come to us, why she didn't tell us sooner. So there's the manipulation of a pedophile, and how they put a child, I guess, on the line, and then just it's their own gratification thereafter, and they don't care about anything else. But a child's life is not the same ever again.
No, that's right. So for you, Mum, I know it was particularly difficult growing up because you lost your mum when you were 10.
Yeah.
Yeah. So grandma died from breast cancer quite young. So you were in foster homes and sort of bounced around.
We were never in a foster home. We were in a children's home. But I had, even if I had the emotional strength or whatever you want to call it to tell someone, I really didn't have anyone to tell. I didn't have an auntie close. I didn't have anyone to tell. Who was I going to tell? You don't talk to your teachers about things. Not back then you didn't. I mean, now you probably could because things are more open. We didn't have guidance officers and stuff like that. That just wasn't really an option. It wasn't even, probably never even entered my head I needed to tell somebody.
Yeah.
It had happened. Deal with it. I don't know. I don't really know. I don't.
Yeah.
But
did you feel like what was happening was like normal?
Oh no, well, I knew definitely it wasn't normal. But no, that part. But I didn't know what to do with it. I didn't know what to do with it. Simple as that. I didn't have a clue. But then for a long time I thought that love and sex are the same thing. But it's only through maturity and life that you learn that is definitely not the case. So,
Yeah,
but
I
I just didn't have, I had really, who was I going to speak to?
Yeah. And, I think, and this is what I said, I remember the first time I ever shared my story, I was in police headquarters at a Toastmasters event. And I knew that I wanted to talk about this. And it was like a 7-minute talk, and I recorded it and I sent it to Mum. And I said, how do you feel? How do you feel about that? And do you remember what you said, Mum?
No, I'm not. I'm sorry, Lovey. You're gonna have to refresh this memory.
Well, you said you felt really guilty. You felt really guilty and you felt really ashamed. And then I said, but you've
That
given
it happened
me,
to you, yeah.
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 I said, you've given me this amazing strength and resilience and the ability to do what I'm about to do. And the thing is, I had always had good role models in my life. I've had good adults in my life. I've been able to pursue the dreams that I wanted to pursue. And it was never easy. God, none of it was ever easy.
No.
But, in many ways, I feel like you took from your story the hard stuff and you did your best to make
Through
it.
adversity grows strength. Hopefully you learn that strength comes with that. You can either let it defeat you or you don't let it defeat you. Simple, really. Don't let it rule what your life's going to be. It happens. You can't unhappen it. You have to put it where it belongs, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I just know, and I think for a lot of survivors out there, there's a lot of parents who are not supportive when they speak up about these things.
That's a big issue for me, because I have some friends who have had some fairly horrific I'm not the word, but happenings in their young lives, and the mothers or parents knew, but nothing was ever done. And that is tragic. That is very tragic, because mums, you're supposed to be there for your children. If you can't be there for them, then... And I've always said this to you before, Kelly, I always thought I had put you in a position where you were never left alone with anybody. There was always more than one of you around. There was more adults. You were never left at anybody's place without other people being around. So it's, as I said, it belies the mind to think that pedophiles are such sneaky, conniving
Bastards, you can say it.
Because I don't think like that about people. I don't want to ever think the worst of people. I always want to think the best of them. And that's just my nature.
Did you think that of Uncle Bob? So Uncle Bob is my offender. He's the person who, for those listening,
we were such a close family. I mean, we did everything together. But because I never ever but it didn't matter whose place it was, whether it was a friend of ours or whatever. There was always never just you left alone with anybody. So there was always more than one child. There was more than one parent. There was more, so that's my, I guess, if you want to call it ignorance, in the capabilities of a child, mental, simple as that.
When did you think you learned about how cunning he was?
Well, honestly, not until you told us what had happened, because he had been previously, and I'd asked you the question, he'd been previously charged, and I asked you the question, had he ever touched you? And you said no. And then and not until you said when you were older that and when it's the worst thing a mother ever wants to go through, because honest to God, it was like we had a death in the family. That's how it affected me, how emotionally, both your father and I. And it was a terrible thing. And then it's guilt, and I felt like I'd let you down, and why didn't I do more? Well, when I look back in hindsight, of course I could have done more, because I've got hindsight now. But at the time, I would never have left you or let you be in a position where I thought anything could ever happen to you, regardless of him or anybody.
Well, now it didn't matter if there was others around. I remember one particular occasion that all the kids, there was I think maybe 4 of them, and he took me to the room and shut the door. The kids were just playing,
Yeah.
you know.
And I just never think of the cunningness of that, and so I don't know what the word is exactly, but I would never think someone would do something like that. I just would never think that.
Yeah.
It's like stealing. I mean, you just sneak behind doors and steal something with it. Basically, that's what you're doing.
Yeah.
And you just don't do it. Yeah, I don't know. That bit I probably will never understand. Hence, I'll never forgive.
Yeah. I think I've had a few conversations, particularly in the last week, with different people who I knew were going to be listening tonight, and there was a lot of questions about, did you ever get an inkling that something wasn't right? Did you ever feel?
Not really. No, not really. Because, everything, and hindsight, you can see that. But
Yeah.
had I took notice of a few things, like the cranky night with music and different things, but you had two younger siblings, and your life's not just you. It's not just Kelly. There's two little kids to be looked after as well. But if I had just you, of course it would be totally different, because your focus is just there.
Yeah. Yeah.
When you had your first anxiety attack at Little Athletics, that probably should have been the first trigger for me, but I just thought it was nerves. You don't look for that, Kelly. You don't look for.
No.
You hope to God everything's all great, and your child's all safe, and you don't put them in a position where things are going to turn that and change that. But in hindsight, when I look back, that was probably the first scream for help, was your anxiety attack at Little Athletics.
Yeah. And I did, as I got older, I started having like more panic attacks, and my mental health did deteriorate quite a bit. But if it wasn't for my sport, I would have really, really struggled, I think.
Yeah.
But just going back to what you were saying before, and I've lost my train of thought a bit here, but well, that's what it was. A lot of people don't realize, and I'm going to say this, and I think it'd be quite freeing for some people, but it's very difficult for me to say because I feel a lot of shame around this, and that's that. It's a lot of parents don't know what's going on because the child is so heavily groomed, and I know this was the case for me, that we protect. Like I felt I was protecting you. I didn't want to upset the apple cart. I didn't want to.
No, because we had such a happy
Yes.
family relationship, yeah, and that is what would have happened for sure. But rather have that happen than have you hurt.
Yeah,
Ever.
and he was so important to our family that interrupting that would have caused some massive issues, but a lot of survivors don't kind of think this way. They don't recognize that this is what's happening, is that they're in this space where, they think their mum should have done something. They think that the loving adults in their life should stop this, right?
Yeah.
But what's actually going on is the survivor, the victim survivor, the child, is having to play the offender's game. They're having to play this game so they keep the secret, right? So
Yeah.
they're kind of, I don't want to say they're partaking in it, but they're trained. They're taught to be this. They're a vessel.
And if you tell anybody, they're not going to believe you, and they're going to think you're the little, pardon me, slut.
Well, it's
they're
been
just
said.
not going to. Yep. Sorry.
No, you're right. It's been said. You're exactly
right. It is. Exactly. I know from experience with a very good friend of mine that's exactly what happened to her. That she was. You asked for it. No, but you don't ask for it. You're a child. You never ask for any of that shit. That is not how life is.
Yeah.
A lot of people who've never had to deal with it will probably never understand it, because I know a personal friend who's never ever had it, and she cannot understand how anybody could ever touch a little child. But the poor children need to have someone in their life that can support them, that can be there for them. Mother should be number one.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, it's this very dark web of secrecy, and I was talking with my good colleague Dr. Sher, who you'll hear from in a few episodes' time. But it's this whole process of reciprocation. the offender picks that most vulnerable part of you and exploits it, and for me and you, like you and I are the same human. We've got the same genes, hey. But quite literally, we have the same mannerisms and tactics and all that sort of stuff. And we're very kind and giving. And so when a perpetrator takes advantage of the child, they take advantage of that kind and giving part. And when they wanted to spend that time, like Uncle Bob, he spent time with me doing the things I love. And I love fishing and I love camping and I love being outdoors. And he would support that. He would support that and he would spend that time with me. And I love that.
Yeah.
So,
So my dad's, sorry?
You feel like you've got to give back.
Yeah. Well, my dad's thing was he just said, what would your mother think if I was with another woman?
Mm.
And I'm pretty sure my mother would think she'd rather you with another woman.
Yeah, but they just say what they need to say
for a child to feel, pressured. Yeah. I don't know what yeah.
So can you put words to? I mean, I was 19 when I disclosed. I wasn't a child anymore, but I was still your child. Because in my head at that point in time, I was so scared, like hyperventilating, scared, like dripping palms, scared, thinking
that we would reject you if you told us what had happened.
Yeah. And I know in reality you wouldn't.
I know that, but you were so scared that you wouldn't have the love that you'd had before, and it never happened. So it's because you get yourself into such a state thinking one thing, when if you've got a really supportive, loving family, that would never happen.
Safe, seen and heard, people. Safe, seen and heard.
I do want to say something that I don't know whether you call it lucky or what you want to call it, but before my father passed away, he asked me to forgive him, and he said to me, previously he'd said to me, in order to forgive, you have to understand. And I thought, well, I don't know if I could ever possibly understand, so I'm not sure if I can ever wholly and solely forgive. But I said I forgave him. That's let him pass in peace, I suppose.
Yeah. And anyway. Do you feel you got closure from that, or not really?
I don't really know. I guess so. I guess I have, yes. Because, he admitted what he had done and wanted forgiveness for it. So I guess, and I got to say it to him, which is not what a lot of victims ever get to say to their perpetrator, because, you very seldom get to say what you really, really, really want to say to them.
I won't ask that.
Well, I've nearly had a nervous breakdown at work because I've seen Bob out the front of my workplace, and I've almost said, because I so want to just tear out there and say what I need to say, and that part I need to probably leave behind and forgive and forget about, but I cannot. So until I can shove your book in his face and tell him to stick it up his backside, I probably won't be able to.
Yes, it is a good book. It tells all, which, it's my sweet revenge in a way, I suppose.
When struggling with forgiveness, it's not about, it depends. I think it depends on the level of victimization you've had with struggling to forgive them. I think someone who's been, I can't call it anything other than tortured for 10 years, that's going to be awfully hard to forgive, because your whole life was never left to be, you were never left to be a child. You were turned into something that you shouldn't have been because of that. So forgiveness is a very hard thing, and it's a personal thing as well, because not everyone has the same ability as other ones. So other people.
So I asked this with love, and but do you feel guilty, like
for you?
Bob? Yeah.
I don't feel guilty. I don't feel as guilty now. I still, because I would like to turn back the hands of time and just go at one point say, But you can't do that, can you?
No.
So the guiltiness is not like that, no.
Yeah. Because I remember in the beginning, and I know that the more we've talked about this and the more advocacy and speaking and stuff that I've done, I think you've come to see things differently by understanding more about the nature of a sex offender.
Once you've realised the nature of I honestly have totally underestimated their abilities. And there was not, he would have, no matter what we would have done, bar for locking Kelly up and never letting her out of the house, he would have found it an opportunity of some sort.
Yeah. So I guess for any parents out there who are listening tonight, I just want to encourage you to recognize the manipulative, grooming, cunning nature of a predator and understand that predators groom families in order to have access.
Absolutely.
And I mean sexual access to a child.
They're there to help. They're there to do this. They're there for that. But they're grooming everybody in their whole the whole circle. Their whole circle.
Yeah.
To get what they want.
Yeah, and that is unfortunately sexual gratification, which is what the grooming definition is. So, but understandably, there are parents who also don't believe or disregard their child's disclosure. And, I had an irrational fear, absolutely irrational fear, that I would not have a place in the house anymore, that you guys would not love me. And it is a rational fear. And it doesn't matter if you're an adult or a child, but when you're an adult, you still have those childlike feelings. You still want to be loved. You still want to be, cared for. And I think you have to come to a point where I think the need to speak up is more powerful than the need to stay silent, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And at that point, it wasn't just about me. These nightmares were so vivid. It was like I could reach out and I could touch him in these dreams. And I was sick to my stomach. And, it wasn't long after I'd spoken and told you what was happening. And I was 19 when I disclosed. My sister is 10 years younger than me. So she was only just 8 or 9 at that point in time, right? So, that's a little bit later than when the offending started with me, but it was playing on my mind that he was possibly going to target her. And then, that's when you saw him squatting down behind a car watching her, and you called him out on it and you did the right thing. But it was also around the same time that I had disclosed. So, this happens and it's real, and we need to stand up for these kids who cannot stand up for themselves.
Exactly. Yeah. And I feel particularly hard for those young people whose mother or whoever who's their carer knows there's something going on and does nothing about it. That is the most heartbreaking thing I can possibly think of. Or even sometimes they condone it. I mean, that's just that boggles my mind to think that where is the love there from a parent? That's selfish, thoughtless, single-mindedness. As simple as that. They're not thinking of their child at all, unfortunately. So, but the poor child, then where does the poor child go if it can't go to its mother or auntie or
an adult? An
adult. Which adult in their life is going to be there for them?
Yeah.
So, and that goes on. It does go on.
Yeah. Look,
those people speak about what happened to them, because what are they going to do? Who are they going to go to? Their mother didn't support them. Yeah.
So what advice would you give to those parents?
Well, to those parents, the parents, your children come first. In life, children always come first. If you didn't want them to come first, don't have them. You look after them. You don't drag them up. You bring them up. You raise them, and you raise them properly. But those parents out there that aren't there for your children, well, I don't know what you can do for that. But the child needs to be, or find, or look for someone they can trust. There must be a teacher, the bus driver, heaven forbid. But yeah, that's hard. That's hard when the ability to find someone to try. Like I had nobody who was I going to tell? I had no one to tell.
So going back to when I disclosed to you, how did you move through that?
Oh, well, it was a very, very, very traumatic and difficult time for us, but it's not about us, but the feeling that your father and I had was, honestly, it was like someone had died in our family. The grieving, we were grieving. Simple as that. We were grieving for the loss of something that should not have been lost. And it took us a long time. It took us a long time. It was just a grieving process, as simple as that. The loss of something that will never come back and never get back.
Now, I know we've never really, like I said, this is the first time we've had this conversation. But do you think, and I mean, I don't know, I'm always good to talk about stuff, but I kind of avoided this with you because I'm like, this is going to be a hard conversation. I'm not sure I'm ready for this. But did you, because initially we didn't talk about it really at all. You know, we didn't, I think we each had our own grief to go through, you know, and it was also a short time after I did go overseas at that point as well.
Yeah.
But we never spoke about it. And I didn't get therapy or anything like that for a very long time.
But yeah, we both had to deal with something we had not dealt with before. Yeah, you're right. We probably should have done it together. I probably should have gone to America with you.
So in hindsight, if you're listening, make sure that when your child discloses or somebody close to you discloses, you get early intervention and support as much as possible. Because I promise you, as an adult with a lived experience, I've had to battle through some pretty big shit, basically. And a lot of that could be avoided with better strategies and having talked to somebody much earlier about this. And you know, I didn't.
You hear so many stories of women who are older who have never, ever told anyone what happened to them because of the shame, I guess, that they think they carried through their adult life. But it's not their fault. It's not the victim's fault. They've done nothing to warrant it, want it, or anything.
No.
Sorry.
100%. No, that's all right. You okay?
Yep.
You're a bloody legend, Mum. All right. And it's look, there's so many, and I say this to the women who are watching this who are older. Well, look, anyone really, but for those of you who've never shared your story, never spoken up about what's happened, I see you. My mum sees you. I feel you, and I totally understand, right? And the choice to talk up, you know, a lot of people say you have to talk up, you have to talk about this. Well, you don't. But I really would encourage you to tell someone. You don't have to report it to the police. You don't have to. But breaking that silence
is the first big step.
Yeah, it is.
It's not our shame. It is not our shame. We have done nothing to be ashamed of. What had happened to us is what is to be ashamed of. The perpetrator of whatever happened to us is what we should be ashamed of, not us, ourselves. We have done nothing. We did nothing to be ashamed of. It was done to us, not the other way around. There is no shame in me or you.
I love you, Mama. You're awesome. Yeah, guys, like if you're sitting there and if you're somebody who's struggles to deal with your abuse, if it holds power over you, meaning you can't talk about it, you can't even see, there's all these triggers, there's all this stuff going on, you can't step into your own success because of this, that person's still holding power over you. You don't owe them anything. You do not owe them one fucking thing. One thing. You do not owe them anything.
Nope.
Right? Not one more second of your time, not one more second of your energy, because I can tell you right now, the energy it takes to hold your secret, to hold on to your
Just
shame,
eat you up.
it kills you. It kills you. So I give you permission to let that go. If you need permission, I'm giving you permission.
Yep.
You don't have to hold that, right? It doesn't belong to you. The responsibility of any abuse. Now, a child cannot make adult decisions when they are a child, right? A child cannot make adult decisions when they are a child. So if you're sitting there believing that you're supposed to make decisions about life and love as a child, I'm telling you right now that's not the case. You cannot have made those decisions in consent. There's no consent. A child cannot give consent.
Nope.
Right? So let that go. Let it go. That shame does not belong to you. And it doesn't matter how old you are. You've heard it from my mum and you've heard it from me. We're 2 generations apart. Okay? But you don't have to hold on to that.
No. Break the shame cycle. Get off that bicycle.
That rhymes, Mum. Good job.
Pellets.
Oh, awesome. Okay. All right. There was some things I wanted to ask you, Mum, and particularly, woo, that's hardcore. All right. Okay, shake it off. About, you know, again, and in hindsight, looking at things now. So, we sat down, we've talked about this, we know what happened, right? So what do you think, so the signs or things that people can be looking out for in their child, and from a mother's point of view, because you're so close to it, sometimes it's very hard to see.
Yeah, and also you have mothers have busy lives. You're busy doing all sorts of things in the house but just different behaviours. I think, and if an attitude towards something changes, but definitely if there's anger towards somebody particularly, I think that's probably the main thing, because that would be the one thing I would pick up mostly about Kelly being angry at not so much Bob, but his partner, because I think Kelly always felt that she knew what was going on and never said a word. And that's why she was so angry at her. And had I thought about, yes, but look for behaviours, but anger for sure, because children who aren't normally angry and then get angry, there's something's going on. So, yeah, mostly those are the things, but definitely anything different going on in the child's life, that's for sure, in their everyday life.
Yeah. And look, I often say, because a lot of parents will ask me, well, how do I stop this from happening? And I always say, look, you are the closest thing to your child. It is the power of that connection, which is the most important thing, because only you will see when something changes.
Yep.
You're going to see, and it's going to be, like Mum said, a mood shift. And I talk a lot about roller coasters and being on a roller coaster through this journey, because what would normally happen is I'd be abused by my uncle. He'd touch me, and there'd be an incident, and then the next day I'd feel filthy. I'd feel disgusting in my own skin, and I just I'd have to have a shower, and like lots of showers, and clean myself, and I would disappear in myself for a couple of days. I would disappear into my books and sort of hide away from the world, and disassociate from myself, not really connecting, not really consciously aware of my surroundings, or not able to respond quickly to instructions and things like that. Or alternatively, so bloody busy, you couldn't ground me for a second, and that's still the way I am. It's my default response, and you don't always pick up on them, but you will get a feeling. Now, I want to ask you, Mum, did you get a feeling, a gut instinct?
I can't really say, to be honest, because as I said,
There was one.
I'm now jaded by hindsight. So hindsight,
Yeah.
I can certainly say there's things.
Yeah. Because
But-
I remember, so this was the last incident, right? So when, and this is,
yes, I do.
you remember.
I do remember what you're talking about. When you broke
Yeah.
your leg.
Yes. Well,
Yeah.
almost. Look, I was 15 and I had this birthday cake. It was full of the most amazing, like, icing ever. And I ended up getting chased with a pile of cream out in the backyard. And I could sprint, you guys. I was so fast. Anyway, I piss bolted and, like, ran flat back into the back of a BMW. And I dented it and I busted my knee. So I was messed up and I couldn't walk very well at all. The following day, so I know I was 15, the following day, my uncle took me fishing, and this was the last incident. And Mum and I talk about this now in hindsight because it's when the puzzle pieces sort of fell together, but Mum didn't quite know at that point what it was that she was seeing. Again, because groomers are so good at what they do, it was very difficult. And we'd gone fishing, and he took me down the bush or whatever, and he started to sexually offend against me, and basically I lost my shit and went Xena warrior princess on him. I kicked him out of the back of the car, punched him in the chest. I swore at him. I said, "Don't you fucking touch me again. Don't you fucking touch my sister. I'll fucking kill you." I was so angry, but I didn't know what was going to happen. And at that point, I thought, because he used to go pig shooting, I thought, I'm going to be a dead pig. He's going to rape me or he's going to leave me here. And I didn't think for 1 second that he would just say, "Okay, I'll take you home." I was like, "You fucking coward.
They're weak.
Coward."
They're weak. That's why they pick on children.
But then I was so angry because I thought, why the fuck, if I could say this after one moment, like one time, and I say, "Stop what you're fucking doing, don't touch me." And
you don't have that ability as a child. You don't have that ability and the strength to say stop when you're 7. You don't. No.
No, but we expect, and this is part of the shame. If you're out there and you're listening, you feel like you're meant to be an adult making these decisions. Like, I should be able to make this stop. I should be able to say no, but you don't. That's what my mom's saying. You don't have that capacity.
You don't have that.
Plus, it's a trauma response, right? Fight, flight, freeze, fawn, right? You don't have that capacity.
No.
So when I came back to the house after that, I was obviously extremely emotional. And I stormed out of the car, and then Mum came out. Do you remember?
Yeah, and then I just asked what was going on.
Yeah, and he said it was a difference of opinion. His words. He said a
Yeah.
difference of opinion. So
when you broke your leg in Toowoomba, and I had to get, because Dad was away working, he drove us down, and he helped get you in the back of the car, and I saw the look of fear on in your eyes then, but you were about 17, 18 then. Yep. And it was just before you told us what had happened. That, because I think that was the start of you having to deal with everything and have to say what, because I thought, what's going on here? Why are you so scared that he is here? What's this mean?
Yeah.
You know? And then my brain was starting to think things too, and I thought, well, you never said anything, so
Yeah. Yeah. So moving forward, so from that moment, obviously things had been like sitting in my mother's little brain. And I went off to college and was competing and training and doing amazing, cool things. And I'm really special. And I think I've said this before, is like, sometimes you need to be hit by a car to be woken up.
Yes, well, that's
what happened. I got hit by a car and I broke my leg. It was not fun. But it was that moment that I came undone. I literally couldn't contain all the stuff that was inside of me. And, that's when I ended up telling Mum and Dad, and I couldn't walk and I couldn't drive. So she brought Bob with her to come and, no, actually I had my grandmother, and he came, I can't remember. Anyway, he picked me up, but that was.
Mum and Bill got you from Toowoomba, and we picked you up from Mum and Bill's place.
Yeah, so my grandmother and grandfather at the time picked me up. But yeah, it was just, I had grown, see, because I was away. I'd spent this time at college, and I was growing, and I was strong, and I was learning about myself. I was taking back my power, people. I was taking back my freaking power, right? And then he comes back in, and I don't get triggered a lot, but I had a trigger response to him, and I was afraid. And I remember the moment because he picked me up and was putting me in the car, and it scared the shit out of me, to be honest. I felt so sick, and that was the beginning of the end for him, right?
Mm.
So then I told mum and dad, and then we went to the police, and I won't say it's a happy ending, but there is some closure. He ended up getting convicted and sentenced to 4 years, but only served 18 months. So I won't comment too much publicly
But
about my feelings.
he has lost way more than we have. He doesn't have any of his family anymore. We have still got all of ours. So
Yeah. And that's the part, I guess, I can draw my justice was served card from. But in saying that, and I have to be grateful to you, mum and dad, for providing me the ability to have the strength and resilience to do shit like this podcast, and to be here and to like have these conversations, because without the strength and the courage from you guys, I wouldn't be here, you know.
yeah,
So that being said, it's definitely not been an easy journey for me. Like, it has been, I mean, and we'll talk about this in this series, guys. Like, we're going to talk about triggers and relationships and not being able to see red flags due to trauma. The definition of love and how it changes. There's so much
I
stuff to unpack.
I think some people, they have wonderful instincts, and if your first instinct about someone is to not trust them, then don't. Simple as that. Do not, because if that's what you feel, then honestly, 9 times out of 10, that is exactly what you should be doing, not trusting them.
No,
So
not
if
at
you,
all.
it doesn't have to be whoever it is in your family or close friends. Don't. If you have that feeling, for goodness sakes, don't take notice of it, because yeah, it's you know it is a mother sometimes has it. Well, sometimes one of the family members do, but yeah, but listen to it for sure.
Yeah, definitely. I think we dismiss gut feelings as things that they're not. Sometimes we write them off as other stuff
Yeah,
when, intuition is so important.
it is very
Um,
important. If someone gives
yeah,
you the creeps, there's a reason they're probably creepy.
yes, they are. Um, okay, cool. So, look, we've probably there's so much we could unpack, Mum. Seriously, there's a lot of people tonight watching, and if you're watching tonight, I just want to thank you so much for supporting Mum and I to have this conversation. There's a lot that I didn't get to ask, but maybe Mum will come back and we'll tackle them again another night. But
Sure.
it's very hard, and I can't imagine. I mean, I'm a step parent, but I'm not a parent myself. Um, and I can't imagine what it would be like to have a child who was sexually abused by someone close in our family. I can't think of the ultimate betrayal. So I guess I just want to ask you, Mum,
Absolutely.
what did you do with that betrayal? How did you handle the betrayal?
For me or for you?
Yes, for you as a mum.
I don't know. I think I've handled it quite well. I've never done drugs or lost the plot or whatever. I put my personally for me, I've treated life as a filing cabinet, and it's in its filing cabinet. And if I need to get it out, I'll bring it out. But I don't very often get to the bottom shelf, so
And
that's
then
it.
how did you feel when, because obviously when my mum was growing up, she relied very heavily on my abuser, my uncle, her brother, to support her, because there wasn't those role models and those strong characters in her family. So, you know, he was mum's big bro, and knowing what he had done, What did you do with that?
Well, that's the most devastating thing, isn't it? That is the biggest betrayal at all, to destroy a family for your own personal pleasure. And, that's the biggest betrayal I can imagine, because, you've just destroyed a whole network of lives for your own pleasure. So,
Yeah. I think a lot of people, a lot of families particularly, don't want to believe that someone who's close to them could possibly be that person, could possibly abuse their child. And they don't believe. They don't believe the child. And I'm going to say this, statistics suggest to us that 98% of children who disclose are telling the truth, right? So if you're a parent and a child discloses to you, the first thing you must do is just believe them. You have to believe them.
Yep.
They're not making that shit up. You cannot make up this stuff. You really can't. So first and foremost, believe them. And, my greatest fear was my parents wouldn't love me anymore, that mum and dad would abandon me or somehow be alone. So the next thing is to validate your love for them. I love you.
It's not your fault.
It's not your fault. So that's probably the most important thing I want to say from this is, if you're that parent, like, don't doubt your child's disclosure, right? You have to believe them.
You believe them and find the truth.
Yeah, because this shame and this stigma carries on, like, and a lot of parents, gosh, there's so many things in my head. One thing is, like, I didn't know about my mum's story until I was 19 and disclosed to her, right? And then she's like, oh my God, it was giving her permission to share her story. So she just said, that happened to me too. If you're out there and you've got a story and you've got children that are struggling with stuff, tell them. Tell them that you have a story. You don't have to go into the nitty gritty. If they're a young child, have an age appropriate conversation with them and say, hey, this is what happened to me. But you don't have to go into, the details of it. You don't need to do that at all. You don't need to traumatize the child. But I 100% believe they should know something. So they know they're not alone, right? They know they're not alone. Simple as that. So
they feel more free to open up and speak if it's happening to them. There's a connection then.
Yeah. All right, Mum. So we've just got one question here. Was there ever a thought in your mind, June, where you thought apple doesn't fall far from the tree? Did you ever consider that there may have been a chance one of your brothers could also be potentially like your father?
No, because I never ever thought that. I'm a very naive person, and also like to think the best of people until they prove me otherwise. Well, I was proven otherwise, as again saying, totally underestimating the power of a pedophile. No, because I never thought that way. But in hindsight, of course, I should have thought that way. But I think no. But the innocence of a child, you don't put it in a box and label it, because you just can't. But as an adult, and you look back, sure, you can change and think, perhaps, I don't know. But I was very young when I had Kelly, so I guess, naivety, whatever you want to call it. I'm a very naive person. I'm blissfully unaware of many things in my life. So, but I like people to think that people will treat me and mine the same way as I would treat them. And I've always thought that until I grew up and realised there was arseholes and bitches in the world. Sorry about that, but it's true. I was quite old before I realised that people were bitchy.
You do, Mum. You're, and I'm the same way. You would think that with all the trauma and, my role as a law enforcement officer, I would be very jaded about people. And I tend to be a little bit more wiser now. But, growing up as a teenager particularly, I had no boundaries, and boundaries is a conversation for another podcast, because Many survivors struggle to implement strong boundaries and, say, this is not okay, this is okay for me. Very, very hard. And that's as a direct result of childhood trauma. It's 100%. But I have always struggled with boundaries. I've always struggled to say what I need. And it's hard. It's really, really difficult, but particularly when it's familial abuse, right? Because the boundaries are completely blurred. The safe space on my bed is a safe space, but when somebody's in my family violates my safe space, which is my bed, then you can't sleep anymore because the safe space that is your bed is no longer that place. Your home is no longer a safe place because it's where the traumas happen. So you can't heal. And I'll tell you this now, if you've got a child who's been abused in a house, you need to bloody move, right? It's simple as that. A child cannot heal in the same place that the trauma has occurred. There's so much. And guys, we are going to unpack so much in this Off the Cuff with Kel series because I believe these conversations need to happen. They need to happen. For all the little Kellys and the little Junes out there that haven't got a voice, and I wanted to bring Mum on here to I guess answer the questions for many survivors whose mums they haven't had this conversation. So I feel like we're kind of having this conversation on behalf of many who are in a similar situation to us, where a mother and a child have both been sexually abused, because that's generational trauma, right? We need to interrupt it by speaking out. We need to interrupt it by saying, this is what's happening. I'm not okay with it.
I just want to go back to the question you just said. As I think about things, I must have had in my back of my mind thinking that maybe, perhaps the apple doesn't fall too far from the tree, because I never left you in his care on your own. I would not, there was always his wife and 4 other children or 6 other adults, or, you were never, but as I said, the opportunity that the ability for them to take an opportunity from nothing is incredible. So, yeah, because you were never there alone, ever. So in my mind, maybe, obviously, maybe I did think that.
Yeah. There's just one more question, Mum, and then we'll probably end up tidying up the end of this stream. But when you I shared with you, the question is, was it the first time that Dad had heard as well?
Yes.
And the answer is yes. So you kept your secret, Mum, for nearly 30 years. Is that right?
Yes. I'd never told anybody, not my sister, not my husband. And my husband and I have been married for 30-something years now, so yes, it was the first time he heard it as well. But saying, Kelly, like when you launched your book, that lady who was 80, or what was she? 80-year-old, she came to you crying and she said to you, I have never told anybody what had happened to me as a child. And she just was in tears. It was just amazing. But, kept it all that time to herself. Yeah. And probably had she not mentioned anything to you, never told anybody, ever.
Yeah, and guys, if you're out there and what was that, sorry?
That's the stigma that they make you feel behind it, that it's your fault and that you should be ashamed, but there is no shame for us.
No, that's right. You don't own it, guys. It's not yours. It belongs to the predator.
Sadness was lost, sure. Be sad because, you've lost something that will never be brought back, but
that's a normal part of the process.
Find something else.
That's right.
Use your things to do something better.
Absolutely. But yeah, if you are sad, that's okay. That's actually quite normal. All right. So if you don't feel anything, that's also very normal. So never ever beat yourself up for how this makes you feel, because I guarantee you're probably feeling exactly how you're meant to be feeling. All right. But don't let it hold power over you. Do not let that predator have control over you anymore. Do not give them one more ounce of your energy or your time. Okay. All right. So guys, sorry, just one more quick question. Did you speak to your brother when you found out what he was doing? I don't think you ever did have a
I
conversation.
have never spoken to him. I had to talk to him on the phone one day. Only because I think he would have thought it was very suspicious. Kelly was laying charges, and I thought, shit, I haven't spoken to him for because I can't speak to him. But I had to talk to him on the phone, and it was the hardest thing I have ever had to do because I was a shaking, pardon me, dog shit and raised by. I was shaking like you wouldn't believe. And I got off the phone. I was just a wreck, and I said, I will never speak to him again. I don't want to look at him because I'm so angry with him still, and I will always probably be angry with him until I have my say to him. If I can ever have my say to him, then I think I'll probably get it. Maybe, I don't know. I'd like to put Kelly's book in the window next time he comes in and see you. Have a good read, mate.
I'd send him a copy, but I don't want to waste my money.
No. Oh, I'd
All
like
right.
to.
Yeah. Well, maybe we can.
I can summon like a G up to do it, that's for sure.
Stop it, Mum.
Come and shove this in the window of his car, would you?
Oh, Jesus. All right, you guys. If you have joined us tonight, I just want to say thank you so much for your support. I can see all your messages and your encouragement. You're not alone on this journey. There's so many of us. Yeah, men or women, and so many of us are sitting quietly.
I will hold your virtual hand.
100%. So, I am establishing an off-the-cuff community. If you want to be a part of that, you can subscribe to my Patreon account at patreon.com/Kelly Humphries and help support the work of this podcast. So I would love you to do that. But thank you so much for being part of this. And again, breaking cycles of abuse and trauma is difficult. We've chosen to have this conversation because we needed to have this conversation. We needed, my mum and I. But for many of you out there, I really hope, I really, really do hope that you've maybe let go of some stuff. You've found some insight, maybe some healing. We'd love to know what you're thinking about this, because I plan to bring you more content like this. So I love you. I really appreciate you. Thank you so much. And guys, you can download the podcast for this in about a week's time from my website, kellyhumphries.com. Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mum.
Thank you. Be brave, everybody. Be brave and strong.